Tonight's Nocturne Expedition takes us into the lowland valleys of Honduras, where the day begins before the heat arrives and the world wakes slowly, one layer at a time. Settle into whatever position feels most comfortable. Allow the surface beneath you to hold you completely. There is nowhere you need to go. Nothing waiting beyond this moment. Only the quiet morning. Only the valley. Only this. The light is just arriving. Not fully. Not yet. Only a suggestion at the edge of the sky. A softening of darkness. Gray becoming pale. Pale becoming the faintest gold. The canopy above holds the night a little longer, filtering the light, slowing it, keeping the ground cool for just a few more minutes. You stand at the edge of camp, still, watching the valley take shape. Somewhere close, a fire has already been lit, small, contained. The smell of charcoal reaches you first, before the sound, before the light finds it. Just the smell, dry, warm, ancient in some way you cannot quite name. The smoke rises in a thin column, unhurried, drifting sideways where the air moves gently through the trees. Metal tins rest at the edge of the coals, blackened at the base, warmed through, inside them, beans from the night before. Tortillas laid directly on the heat, edges curling slightly. The smell shifts, charcoal giving way to something softer, corn, warmth, the particular comfort of food prepared simply by hands that have done this many times before. The crew moves quietly around the fire, no urgency, not yet. The day has not demanded anything of anyone. There are low voices, Spanish drifting through the morning air, a laugh, brief, then quiet again. Someone crouches, turning a tortilla with bare fingers. Practiced, unbothered by the heat. You accept what is offered. The tin is warm in both hands, the beans soft, the tortilla still holding heat at its center. You eat slowly, standing, watching the valley emerge from the last of the darkness. The humidity is already present, not oppressive. Not yet, but there, a weight in the air, gentle, constant, resting against the skin like something familiar. The valley floor below is still in shadow. The river catches the early light differently, a faint silver, moving, while everything around it holds still. Birds begin, not all at once. One voice first, then another answering from a different tree, then a third, further away, building slowly into a layered sound that fills the space between the trees without crowding it. You listen without trying to identify, without counting, only receiving, the sound settling into you, the way warmth settles, the way morning settles, slowly, completely. The fire burns lower, the tins are set aside, boots are laced, field books tucked into packs, the compass checked once, quietly, a habit more than a need. But there is still a moment, before the work begins, a pause that belongs to no one and everyone. The valley, fully visible now, green, layered, stretching further than a single day could cover. Mist still holding in the lowest places, dissolving slowly as the light reaches it. You breathe it in, the charcoal, the corn, the damp earth warming at the edges of the path. This is how the day begins here, not with urgency, not with noise, but with fire and tin and the slow arrival of light, carrying you forward gently into whatever the valley holds. The fire has cooled, the tins are set aside, and the valley waits below. You shoulder your pack, adjust the straps, feel the familiar weight settle. The field book is there, the flagging tape, the compass, everything in its place, everything accounted for. The path begins at the edge of camp, narrow from the first step, the vegetation closing in almost immediately, not hostile, simply present, simply itself. The guide moves ahead, already in position, a few steps in front. The machete rises and falls, a clean sound, rhythmic, unhurried, rises and falls. The vines are dense this morning, tangled between trees at shoulder height. Saba vines twist through the understory, binding branches together, looping back on themselves, thorned in places, resistant where they have grown thick. The machete finds them anyway, rises and falls, and the path opens, one step at a time. You follow behind, stepping where the ground has just been cleared. The cut ends of vines still fresh, still holding moisture at the edge. The smell of broken vegetation rises, green, sharp, alive. Behind you, others follow in the same line, each person maintaining spacing, careful, deliberate. The jungle does not allow for walking side by side, only one after another, a quiet procession, moving deeper into the valley. The sound of the machete fades ahead, then returns, then fades again. Between the strikes, the jungle fills the silence completely, insects already, a continuous layered hum, not loud, not soft, simply constant, a field of sound that surrounds without pressing. Above it, somewhere deeper in the canopy, a bird calls once and does not repeat. The compass is checked, a bearing established, noted, held quietly in mind. The transect begins here, spaced evenly from the last, distance maintained through pacing, each step counted, each interval held, occasionally confirmed with tape stretched between 2 points, but mostly through the body, through accumulated habit, through the particular knowledge of how far one step carries you in this terrain, on this soil. You take your place in the line, spacing yourself carefully from the person ahead, not by sight, the vegetation is already too thick for that, but by awareness, by sound, by the particular quality of attention that fieldwork teaches, slowly, over many seasons. There is no destination today, only the transect, only movement, step, pause, look, step, pause, look, and the rhythm begins. The line moves forward, slowly, each person maintaining interval as best as the terrain allows. At times, the vegetation closes in completely. The others disappear from view. The sounds of their movement fade, and for a moment, you are alone. Only the compass, only the bearing, only the steady count of your own steps. Still, the transect holds, guided by compass, not by sight. Most of the day is walking, deliberate, repetitive, attention held low, focused on the ground, scanning for variation, a change in soil color, a darkening, a patch of ashy gray against the reddish earth, a fragment of ceramic, a worked edge of stone. The eye learns what to look for, not all at once, but slowly, season by season, until looking becomes a kind of listening, until the ground begins to speak, in a language made of texture and color, and the particular way light catches a surface that does not quite belong. When something appears, you stop, not abruptly, simply the line continues ahead, but you are no longer part of it. You crouch. The flagging tape comes first, a bright strip tied to the nearest branch, marking the location before anything is touched, before anything is moved, the position recorded, the bearing noted. Then, only then, you brush lightly, fingers or brush, moving soil with patience, turning the fragment carefully. Ceramic, worn smooth at the edges, the surface pattern faded, but present, quiet, part of something larger not yet visible. You hold it for only a moment, then bag it, label it with provenience, the transect number, the distance from the last point, the depth if relevant, everything connected to a place, to a moment, to a position within the grid. Then you stand and return to the line, step, pause, look, step, pause, look. The work is not to find a single object. It never is. The work is to understand distribution, density, pattern, absence, where things are and where they are not. Both speak. Both matter. The absence of ceramics tells you something, just as the presence does. And slowly, across the morning, the pattern begins to emerge. Fragments increase, then cluster. The spacing between finds shortens. You note it without urgency. A change in density, worth following. The compass is checked again, the bearing held, but the attention sharpens slightly. A low rise appears ahead, subtle, no more than a meter high, easy to miss if you are not looking, easy to explain away as natural variation, but the ceramics say otherwise, a vague circular form, then another, further along, and another beyond that. A grouping begins to take shape, possibly a small hamlet, structures defined not by standing walls, but by accumulated stone, collapsed over centuries, settling back into the earth, slowly becoming indistinguishable from it. Ceramics scatter across the surface here, more frequent now, suggesting repeated activity, people returning to this place, shared space, shared time, perhaps a courtyard, once central to daily life, once filled with the sounds of cooking and children and the particular rhythms of a community, now barely visible, now only a subtle rise in the ground, only fragments in the soil, only a pattern, if you know how to read it. The survey expands outward, defining the extent of the site, walking beyond the concentration, noting where the materials begin to thin, where the fragments grow sparse, where they disappear entirely. The edges matter as much as the center. This work is not only recovery, it is interpretation, an ongoing conversation between the present and everything the soil has held. In this region, the question remains open. How Maya were these communities? How closely connected to the core centers, to Copan, to the larger political and ceremonial world? Ceramics speak to this. Lithics speak to this. Settlement patterns, the spacing of structures, the orientation of mounds, all contribute to an answer that is never immediate, never simple, never fully complete. Later, mapping begins. The survey pauses, and something slower takes its place. A tripod is set carefully into the ground, one leg at a time, balanced against roots, against the uneven soil, adjusted, leveled, checked. Tape is extended between points, held taut, distances measured, angles observed, recorded without haste. A physical map is drawn by hand on paper that has already softened slightly in the humidity, each line placed deliberately, each point anchored in measurement. No digital screen, no instant rendering, no automatic calculation, only the accumulated precision of careful hands and careful eyes and the slow discipline of doing one thing at a time. The process continues, quietly, methodically, the jungle indifferent around it, insects continuing their layered sound, light shifting almost imperceptibly through the canopy. After rain, which comes without much warning and passes the same way, the landscape changes, the soil darkens, softens, the surface reveals more than it did before. Fragments appear that were hidden an hour ago, ceramics more visible against the darker ground, edges clearer, colors more distinct. The rain has done what the eye could not. Near the river, in the lower reaches of the Sula Valley, the ground sometimes gives way, not violently, but completely. Large sections of the bank collapse, falling cleanly away, exposing what was underneath, and suddenly, without excavation, without planning, the entire stratigraphy is there. Bands of soil layered through time, each one a different color, a different texture, a different period, readable if you know the language. Within them, artifacts remain embedded exactly where they were left. Obsidian blades, hundreds of them, dark, sharp, still catching the light after 1,000 years. Ceramic vessels, intact, or nearly so, resting in the matrix as though set down carefully, as though a workshop has been interrupted, or a moment of daily life preserved simply by the slow accumulation of earth above it. You stand at the edge, looking into sequence, into time made visible in cross-section. The layers speak without being asked. There is no need to disturb, only to observe, to record, to understand what is being offered, and then you return again to the line. Step, pause, look, step, pause, look. At times, the dense vegetation opens suddenly, without warning, without transition. One moment the jungle is close on all sides. The next, it simply stops, and you step through, into light. Cattle fields, quiet, uneven, the grass worn down in irregular patterns, where animals have gathered, and moved, and gathered again, over seasons. The sky visible all at once, wide, the blue of it surprising after hours under canopy. You stop for a moment, without deciding to, simply receiving the openness, the air moving differently here, freely, without obstruction, touching the face, the forearms, the back of the neck, A few cows stand at a distance, still, watching. They are smaller than expected, compact, low to the ground, nothing like the larger cattle seen elsewhere. A different animal for a different landscape, built for heat, for uneven ground, for the particular demands of this valley. They do not approach and do not retreat, only watch with a particular bovine patience as the line moves slowly across the field, unhurried, systematic. Just as it moved through the jungle, the ground here is easier to read, less covered, more exposed, the grass short enough that surface materials show clearly, fragments more visible against the pale soil. You move across the field, still counting steps, still holding the bearing, still scanning, the rhythm unchanged. Even here, even in the open, step, pause, look, step, pause, look. The cows watch and do not move. Someone in the line says something low, a quiet comment, a small laugh from further back, then quiet again. The line continues, then, just as quietly as it opened, the field ends. The path narrows again. The guide moves ahead, the machete rising and falling, and the jungle closes back in. The light contracts. The sky disappears above the canopy. The air thickens again, warmth and humidity returning, familiar now, almost comfortable. The insects resume their layered sound, as though they never paused, as though the clearing never happened. The afternoon moves differently than the morning. The body knows it before the mind does. A slight heaviness, not unpleasant, simply the accumulated weight of hours, of attention sustained, of ground covered. The steps continue, but something has shifted. The urgency of the morning, the sharpness of early attention, has softened into something steadier, something that requires less effort and more endurance. The light begins to change, filtering differently through the canopy. The angle of it shifted, the quality altered. What was sharp and direct in the morning is now diffuse, broken into pieces by the leaves, falling in fragments across the ground. Shadows lengthen, edges fade. The green of the vegetation deepens, moving toward something darker, richer, as the afternoon advances. The sound of insects deepens too, settling into a slower, heavier rhythm. Different species now, perhaps, or the same ones. Changed by the hour, the morning hum was bright, insistent. This is lower, more sustained, a sound you feel as much as hear. The line slows, not by instruction, not by any signal passed between people, simply, naturally, the way water slows approaching stillness, everyone feeling the same shift, responding to it, without needing to name it. Flags remain behind, bright strips tied at intervals through the jungle, marking the points of interest, the interruptions in the pattern, the places that will need to be returned to, examined more closely, perhaps excavated, perhaps only recorded, their color vivid against the green, the only vivid thing in a landscape of earth tones. The tripod is folded, one leg at a time, carefully, the tape rolled back onto its spool, field notes gathered, pages checked, nothing left open, nothing left incomplete, equipment distributed among the group, weight shared without discussion. the way things are shared when people have worked together long enough to know without asking. Local crew members move steadily around you, their work constant, practiced, unhurried even at the end of the day. Large crews have always been part of this work. This is not incidental. Local labor forms the foundation of excavation. Without it, nothing gets done. Not the survey, not the mapping, not the clearing of vegetation that makes any of it possible. Students and visiting archaeologists guide, record, interpret. But the physical knowledge of this landscape, the understanding of its seasons, its terrain, its particular demands, belongs to the people who live within it. The balance is not always simple. Wages paid here differ from those of surrounding landowners, a fact that sits quietly in the background of the work, unspoken most days, but present, attention held carefully by everyone. Still, the work continues, shared, structured, dependent on many hands, on many kinds of knowing, on the particular collaboration that field archaeology requires and rarely fully acknowledges. You take one final look before the direction changes, before the return begins, at the mounds, low against the ground, almost invisible now in the fading light, at the flagged points, bright against the green, at the subtle patterns now visible that were not visible this morning. The hamlet, the courtyard, the distribution of fragments across the survey grid, a shape emerging slowly from the evidence. You hold it for a moment. This view, this particular arrangement of light and shadow and accumulated knowledge, knowing that tomorrow it will look different. Knowing that understanding, like excavation, is never finished in a single day. The compass is lowered, returned to the pocket, no longer needed, the bearing known now, held in the body. The direction changes, and the return begins.